Hey there, I'm Mark, in affiliation with Spectrum Pulse, and yep, Billie Eilish album bomb week, and it's Billboard Breakdown. I don't remember. You know, sometimes album bomb weeks wind up feeling streamlined. I have mentioned this before. Normally it comes when one replaces another, but normally there aren't roughly 3 weeks of drama in between, and that's to say nothing of any of the rumored drama between our protagonist here. And yeah, while I know the internet has tried to make a big deal out of any potential feud between Taylor Swift and Billie Eilish, until it's said on record, this looks more like glancing subs in interviews and the marketing divisions of Interscope and Republic playing games with your money. Point being said, I would say this is one of the easier album bomb episodes in some time, except for the fact that all of it falls within my stipulated range, and that means I'm covering every song from an album I have already reviewed at length. Fun stuff. Anyway, our top 10, where for another week I had some help by Post Malone featuring Morgan Wallen and held the number 1. And again, while the sales are really strong and streaming is good, the real growth for this song is coming off of one of the hottest radio pushes I have seen in some time. It's clear where the industry has pushed its thumb on the scale for this song, which, as I said last week, really isn't much to write home about. Now granted, if you're on Mercury or Republic, you'd probably want this to overshadow a song with scathing allegations against one of your associated premier acts, and that takes us to Not Like Us by Kendrick Lamar at number 2, which is right back on top on streaming, but has much weaker sales, and it is getting a radio push, just much slower, which again feels very revealing to me. Anyway, it's still handily above $1 Million Baby by Tommy Richmond at number 3, which has better sales and only a slight lag on streaming and the radio. I'm a little bit shocked it finally got shipped to radio at all, but it is moving. What might have more stable traction is A Bar Song Tipsy by Shabuzi, holding at number 4. The radio traction, it's finally there, sales are strong, it's close behind on streaming. This has all the makings of a consistent, strong summer hit. Great song too, I'm happy. But now we get the first new arrival, and an interesting one, Lunch by Billie Eilish at number 5. Now, as expected for any strong album bomb, the streaming is excellent, but what shocks me is how fast this has been shipped to radio and how it's already beating out Not Like Us. It's pegged as the big pop hit from the album. It's probably one that's gonna stick around. I'm just a little bit shocked radio is so strong behind it given the subject matter, but I'm also not gonna complain. Progress. Hell, it beat out Espresso by Sabrina Carpenter at number 6, where despite good streaming and a sales pickup, she's probably wondering who the hell has to be paid to get her more radio traction. The song is a hit, it just feels like the breakthrough is stymied by exterior factors, or her management just not having enough clout to throw around just yet. Now this takes us to Lose Control by Teddy Swims at number 7, which despite stable sales, it's absolutely on the way out as it finally hit a peak on the radio, and that's just ahead of the fate of Beautiful Things by Benson Boone at number 8, which despite a really good sales week, it's an outright freefall. Then we got Too Sweet by Hozier actually picking up a spot to number 9. I'm frankly shocked by how strong its radio growth is, and I could argue that outside of Billie Eilish overtaking him on position, the streaming's there too, but we can't ignore how that song just jumped past Fortnite by Taylor Swift featuring Post Malone down to number 10, where the radio growth is a little inconsistent and the streaming is down. I like the song, but it's not really about to compete with the big summer bangers. I would not be surprised if this gets rotated out a little bit more quickly than Swift's camp might expect. And that naturally takes us to our losers and dropouts. And honestly, if you're looking for someone who had a rough week, it probably would be Taylor Swift. Yeah, 23 by Chase Beckham and Wildflowers and Wild Horses by Lainey Wilson. They're both gone and they're both going to fall short of the year-end list for 2024. But the big track finally getting rotated out is Cruel Summer by Taylor Swift. I mean, it's handily a lock for the year-end, but it got shoved into recurrence. The song's from 2019, I kinda get it. So let's go to our losers and get through all the Taylor Swift there as well. I Can Do It With a Broken Heart at 26, Down Bad at 30, Who's Afraid of Little Old Me at 45, But Daddy I Love Him at 54, Guilty as Sin at 55, So Long London at 57, My Boy Only Breaks His Favorite Toys at 58, Florida with Florence and the Machine at 64, The Smallest Man Who Ever Lived at 65, The Tortured Poets Department at 66, Love of My Life at 81, The Alchemy at 82, So High School at 83, Fresh Out the Slammer at 84, I'm Gonna Get You Back at 94, and I Can Fix Him, No Really I Can at 100. And speaking of bad weeks, the aftermath on Drake, pardon the pun if you know you know, has been pretty harsh, with Family Matters plummeting to 48, Push-Ups at 74, and even his support for 4-Bats with Act 2 Date at 8 hitting 63. Yes, Meet the Grams by Kendrick Lamar fell to 67, but that song shouldn't have lasted 3 weeks at all in the Hot 100. I'm still chalking it up as a win. Then we got the expected post-album bomb fall off for Gunna with One of One at 37, On One Tonight at 71, and Prodadem with Offset at 85. And the rest are kind of scattered. I Like the Way You Kiss Me by Artemis slid down to 39 as it looks like the virality is just about done. Might wind up short of the year-end list too, yikes. And Boa by Megan Thee Stallion crashed off the debut to 91. I know her management is supposedly better now, but the inability to get consistent traction is worrying. Someone is screwing up things when the songs are legit good. Now, as expected, we do not have much in the way of gains or returns for an album bomb week. In the latter group, they're both country songs, with Wondering Why by the Red Clay Strays clawing back to 99, and Take Her Home by Kenny Chesney rebounding to 92. And that's pretty much the same for a lot of our former group, with the biggest jump going to I Think I'm in Love with You by Chris Stapleton at 69. I mean, it's a sleeper hit waiting to happen. Alongside Dirt Cheap by Cody Johnson at 70, and a really big jump for Bulletproof by Nate Smith at 44. Thank Nashville Radio for really pulling out there. The only other big game is Si No Quieres No by Luis R. Conriquez and Niton Vega at 72. And I mean, when you have that much consistent YouTube, you can't be that surprised. Now, this would be where I would list off all the Billie Eilish songs that would fall under my album bomb rules outside of the top 40 and neither the best nor the worst, but they're all in the top 40. Just my luck for this week. But anyway, at least there's not that many other new arrivals this week outside of her, so let's get this going with number 98. Heat Stick by Shoreline Mafia presents Ohgeesy and Fenix Flexin.
He looked up, all he seen was a red dot. Heat stick, hot stick, brown with a mop stick, and going back and forth. If it's on, we on, ops quick. Freak bitch toxic. I fucked it and I blocked it. Nigga try to run up on his run, we get to knocking.
So there's a bit of a story about this one. If you recognize the name Shoreline Mafia, they were a West Coast rap group that started to see breakout success in the late 2010s, with a debut album in summer of 2020. Or at least they were a rap group, because founding members were leaving before the debut album even dropped, and the group broke up that year. But in 2023, 2 members reformed the group. They're now seeing their biggest charting success to date, and honestly, I'm not really wowed by it. I don't mind that rhythmic West Coast groove, even if it feels like the percussion is kind of blown out against the hazy melody and piano. But Ohgeesy and Fenix Flexin, they stick to this very flat monotone, with the former just being a little bit more nasal. And while their flows are largely competent, the content is not remotely interesting. A lot of dull flexing, fucking, and gunplay with very little that stands out as witty or notable. I mean, I guess with the West Coast being up right now in mainstream culture, folks would gravitate towards something like this maybe on a playlist. Plus, if it's flagged as a notable comeback, but I'm sorry, this ain't memorable. Next, number 47, Sweet Dreams by Wetzel.
Sweet dreams, it's so hard to have sweet dreams.
So you know how I've said that it's been kind of weird for as long as I have covered indie country? Very few of the acts that I have reviewed or have underground buzz wound up hitting the charts? Here's an exception, and a pretty polarizing one if you know. Wetzel. He's out of Texas, reportedly leaning on a lot of country rock, even grunge and punk, so I guess it makes sense he might have some crossover nowadays with the rock edges, and he ran up a couple albums on the independent circuit before signing to Columbia and releasing the project Sellout in 2020 and Hell Paso in 2022. The reason I've described him as contentious has most to do with his content, namely that he has got a cursing, somewhat juvenile approach to his lyricism and his performances that's tended to create a friction in the scene, but he's moved a lot of units. He's got steady groundswell. It looks like Columbia at least wants to challenge Zach Bryan for that indie country crossover market. So this is a single from his newest album set to drop in July, and it's weird because listening to this track, it doesn't really fit how I've described this guy. A mid-tempo, melancholy song where Wetzel is in a late-night drunken spiral he's writing to his ex, who he's fairly certain was right to dump him for his self-destructive drinking and drug abuse, but he can't quite get her out of his head. And while there's always been an undercurrent of darkness to even Wetzel's party material, this is more straightforward, a little self-aware, and it kind of winds up pretty solid as a result with the sharper percussion, the liquid guitars, and some of his huskier multi-tracking. It kind of gives me the thought he might be looking to take a chunk out of Morgan Wallen's market share more than Zach Bryan. And you know what, on production and supple groove alone, I'd say he would have a shot if properly pitched. Now, I mean, the one verse and bridge feel a little bit underwritten for my taste, but honestly, as a mainstream introduction to this guy, this is really solid. Give it a shot, check it out. Number 36, Bittersweet by Billie Eilish. So look, I already reviewed the album at length just over a week ago on my main channel. If you're curious about the larger thematic conversation and my overall thoughts, go check that out. But since we got all 10 songs to get through, and most of them fall into a pretty well-established sonic template, I'm gonna try to keep this relatively brief, so let's start off with the penultimate song, where we are now in post-breakup mode and Billie is on the road again, stuck in a lot of overseas hotels as she tries to arrange the discreet hookups that she described on Happier Than Ever to get past a lot of the swirling mire of post-breakup angst. But what's more interesting might be the sound, where this broad splash of analog synth opens up the song and then fades into this bassy rumble of stuttering fragments, which slips into the bleeping hotel lobby bossa nova that leaves Billie midway back in listless isolation. She's described this track as intentionally off-putting and a little confusing, intended to capture that disoriented post-breakup feeling as the synths wash back in. I think my larger frustration is that as much as I like that nice little keyboard motif that ends off the song, it feels like a fragment of a melodic idea, an echo of the greatest. So there's just not much in the way of payoff anywhere, and that's fine in context of the album, but for an individual song, I mean, it's still good, just not really a favorite. Number 31, The Diner by Billie Eilish.
Was easy getting over and I landed on my feet. I came in through the kitchen looking for something to eat. I left a call and cards so they would know that it was.
Probably the oddest song on the album, notably because it's most like her earlier projects and it's more in thematic continuity than directly fitting to even a loose narrative. The heavier rattle of percussion around the warbling synths and pummeling bass that almost feels smothering, it captures some of that old school horror vibe, albeit nowhere near as tightly or with such fine control of the mix compared to her debut. It's thicker, it's lumbering. It creates the feeling that the stalker at the core of the song might know their prey, but not really grasp the subtleties, which isn't surprising given their mental instabilities implied all over the track. Now, Billie has had to deal with a lot of stalkers before, she's written about it before, but if she wanted to imply her own obsessive love tilted into such a dark place, well, it fit the context of the album. Again, it is potent. I appreciate the throwback, I just want to like it a little more. Number 25, Blue by Billie Eilish.
Living black and white, but I'm so blue. I'd like to mean what I say I'm over you.
Okay, the album closer, and given the title, probably what prompted so many unwarranted Joni Mitchell comparisons. And I like a lot of the writing here. First, reworking a very old demo called True Blue with several callback references to other songs on the album to describe the feelings at the end of this relationship. But where the song gets more interesting is in its second passage, where she's mature enough to muse upon everything that didn't work, from the ex's unresolved family issues to her own insomnia that have held her captive. She doesn't blame or hate this person, just sadly acknowledging it won't work, and she's still processing a lot of that pain. And with the final line, noting the audience that's already moved on from her heartbreak in her art, that subtle metatextual sting. And yeah, I'm not sure I'd call this one of my personal favorites either. The drums and bass feel a little too clunky for the ethereal textures of that first verse. The second more delicate piano piece apparently was originally written around the Happier Than Ever sessions, until it creeps into this weirdly squeaky bassy passage that pitches her voice down as this very brittle forward trap percussion slips in to be replaced by admittedly some really pretty strings. I don't know, it's effective, I think, but the emotional payoff never really fully sticks. Call it good, if not great, unlike number 24, The Greatest by Billie Eilish.
You don't want me naked, made it all look painless. Man, am I the greatest?
Yeah, full disclosure, this is my favorite on the album, a mother of a breakup ballad that makes full use of the space, as Billie Eilish tries so damn hard to make it work and overcommit, and then she just has to give up. Where her sarcasm would have an edge if it wasn't so heartbreakingly sad, racked by the fact that she did not want to have to do this. This person could have been the greatest. And Billie sings it like she believes it with all her heart. And unlike a fair few songs on this album, it feels self-contained in the swing for the fences. From the delicate acoustic slow build to the soft percussion and guitars building up more cyclical layers as the strings ramp up, and then the electric guitars and the gleaming synths crash in, and Billie starts belting, and it just hits like a ton of bricks. It definitely feels like the most conventional composition that Billie has released in some time. But hey, you know what? When it works, it really works. Excellent song. Number 23, Ain't No Love in Oklahoma by Luke Combs.
You'll know when it's coming for you, riding in on a wind and rain.
So let's take a short break from Billie Eilish and get to the one other song, that being from Luke Combs and a single from the soundtrack of Twisters. Yes, the sequel to the 90s movie Twister, which for some reason the soundtrack brought in a ridiculous amount of country talent, mainstream and independent. Now, I actually went back to check the original 90s Twister soundtrack to see if this might have been a thing, and that soundtrack is weird. It's wildly all over the place. From Van Halen getting a top hit on the mainstream rock charts to Tori Amos to the Red Hot Chili Peppers to Shania Twain throwing on No One Needs to Know, which dropped a year earlier. But Luke Combs chose to make this a country rock stomper that's honestly kind of outside his usual neo-traditional comfort zone, even compared to some of the rougher sounds of his first album. Hell, it sounds like he's trying to deliver a holler like Chris Stapleton or maybe Jelly Roll, and you can tell he doesn't quite have the depth or body in that range or volume to really sell it. Kind of a shame that he can't really deliver here, because the rest of the track is really solid. The primary minor chord riff has some muscle, I like the guitar solo, and much to my pleasant surprise, Luke Combs indulged in a very 90s tradition of literally making the song about the plot of the movie and chasing tornadoes. Now, it's more poetic in the framing. He never actually mentions tornadoes, refers to them primarily through symbolism and metaphor, and then the tough, dangerous, emotional road getting to them and the toll it might take on you as a man. But you can tell he cared more about the writing of this than I think anyone expected him to, and I can kind of respect that. I don't really think it's very good. Give this to someone with a little bit more soul and firepower, it could go off, but I at least respect it. Number 22, L'amour de ma vie by Billie Eilish.
You were the love of my life, the love of my life.
Now getting back to the grand ballads I really like, this is also in that camp, although I can't shake the feeling if she put the proper extended version of the song on the album, it would be much higher in my books. Because I like the soft lounge approach to the orchestration with the watery guitar and the gentle percussion. Billie nails that sensuous, smooth jazz reflection where she ruefully tries to take the high road, but the person moved on way too fast and she's got to shrug and admit, yeah, calling them the love of her life was a lie in retrospect. And while it feels a little broadly played for the second hook, I kind of wish if this stayed more slinky and low-key and subtle. It did get back to that territory, and then the song changes completely. It fades into this muted, pitch-shifted bedroom pop segment, and then ramps into what I can only describe as a synth house breakdown that feels imported from the mid-80s or the nearest Church's album, with Billie submerged in autotune as all the veneers just collapse, and she's trying to sweat out her angst on the dance floor. And let me be clear, I am here for this. The breakdown and melody, it sounds great. The percussion gallop at the very end is impressive, but it's only around for less than 2 minutes. The extended version of the track at least allows this to be a fuller song. As it is, just feels like a missed opportunity. It's still great, but it should have been spectacular. Number 18, Skinny by Billie Eilish. I've seen a weird amount of backlash for this opening. It's too conventional for Billie, a very expected slow burn, and I'm not sure that's fair. It feels like the natural continuation of themes from Happier Than Ever. I like that after losing weight, Billie is torn on whether the newfound positive attention is genuine or just because of the image change. Her exasperation with the industry and not able to have her growth feel self-contained to her fans at a level that she could control, especially with the internet that just wants drama. And I like her reflecting on the line of whether she's acting her age or whether or not she's on the way out as a result. A very notable comment on how the industry exploits young girls by saying they are wiser beyond their years. And when you pair it with the gentle guitars and the subtle sample touches of crowd noise over the second verse and the strings that ebb up over the outro, yeah, okay, expected sound for Billie, but when the formula is this great, I cannot complain. Great stuff. Number 17, Wildflower by Billie Eilish.
Back of my mind all the time, like a fever, like I'm burning alive, like a sun.
So the next couple songs here, I'll be fully honest, they just never really clicked for me. And let's start with one of which I think was closest. Billie is writing about trying to console a girl after this breakup, only for her to wind up with the ex in question. And there's this messy feeling of guilt that she can't quite escape, especially as it starts hitting her personal insecurities as well around this relationship, and she could maybe screw up that. I mean, it's complicated, and Billie really sells the messy emotionality as the mix lets creeping background noise flesh out the acoustics and the faint twinkles, and the backing vocals just cascade in, intensifying the feeling of second-guessing inner voices before we get that final inversion in the lyrics and the hook. And then the outro comes in, and it feels really superfluous, a fragment that takes away from a really stronger ending. In other words, I still think it's very good, it just should have been great. It was right there. Number 13, Birds of a Feather by Billie Eilish.
Till the day that I die, till the light leaves my eyes, till the day that I die.
Now in this case, I've seen a number of folks highlight this as the very obvious second single, if this project gets another single beyond Lunch, which might be asking a lot, but I get it. The cycling, soft melody around the jingling, but weirdly chalky percussion as the bass line ramps up. It has a very mid-2000s vibe as the acoustic line opens. It's a very accessible pop love song where Billie's overcommitment is just charming and naive enough. Although that synth at the end kind of reminds me of MGMT of all things. But when you recognize how much Billie's voice is nestled into that mix, even when she starts belting, it just feels like it's very pleasant but never reaches another proper gear. The sort of pop song that adult alternative radio would have loved in 2006, but everyone would have forgotten after that summer. I mean, I've heard this before. It's fine. If it became a hit, I'm not like I'm gonna complain, but I'm not sure it's that special. And you know, while we're on that note, number 12, CHIHIRO by Billie Eilish.
I know you said before you can't cope with anymore. You told me it was war, said you'd show me what's in store. I hope it's not for sure. Can you open up the door?
So a lot of folks were really surprised and annoyed that I considered this the weakest song off of Hit Me Hard and Soft. Maybe it's because I'm way less into anime than some, and given how this track is drawing upon Studio Ghibli's Spirited Away, there's a resonance that I might be missing. But this track still feels off on the album. Yeah, the bass line's cool, but the odd vocal filtering around that rattling knock and warbling synth cascades feels metallic, grainy, and over-arranged. And this is where we get those louder arpeggios midway through the song and Billie's falsetto vocal runs that just do not work for me. Yeah, the sandy house groove on the back third, it's nice before we get those gurgling guitar touches and the pitched down vocals and the even louder synths. And even if I like that whistling tone at the core, I just don't think it comes together. And yeah, I get when you look into the lyrics, it's supposed to feel confusing and frustrating and ambiguous. Billie's lover is taking some space away from her, and she feels like her feelings are being yanked away, and she feels gaslit and anxious, and that makes sense with this sound. But I don't know, between the sequencing with this coming right after lunch and too many textural elements I just don't like, it's not bad, but it does feel like a swing and a miss. At least for me. And finally, number 5, Lunch by Billie Eilish.
Tongue tastes like she might be the one, and I could never get enough. I could buy her so much stuff. It's a craving, not a crush.
Whereas if she was going to provide the hit that works, Lunch really feels like it stuck the landing. A straightforward queer horny song all about cunnilingus where she for one nearly feels overwhelmed by the whole experience, the deer in the headlights. It nails the slightly awkward tension of modern flirting, especially given that thanks to her fame she can buy this girl things before diving straight in. And more importantly, it's about the only song on this album that has an actual sense of humor, down to every sampled sound effect in order to add color. And when you pair it with that bouncy, reverbed, very Californicated guitar line and that sinuous groove that starts to break down ever so slightly as the pulsating bass crushes the outro and Billie starts panting, yeah, call it super effective. Someone probably fainted. I mean, it's honestly so direct, there's not a lot to say, but when it's this much fun, I can't remotely complain. Great song. Actually, you know what? Yeah, honorable mention. Best of the week is going to The Greatest. It lives up to its title. Worst of the week is Heat Stick by Shoreline Mafia, with CHIHIRO by Billie Eilish as the dishonorable mention. And look, hell, I don't even think either song is bad, just not really to my taste. Next week, I think we actually have a proper breather, unless there's some disruption I have missed in the wings. We will have to see. But until then, I'm Mark. You're watching Billboard Breakdown, affiliated with Spectrum Pulse. And I'll see you next time.